welcome back. Today we have a panelist discussion. We've got three individuals who would like to give us their perspective. I'm Deanna Barty. I'm from Adams State University. I teach in the School of Business, and I'm also the ethics champion. So today I have the privilege of introducing our panelists. We have Frank Kugel with he's the general manager for the Upper Gunnison River Water Conservancy District. And we've got Jesse Kruthbuck from the Upper Gunnison Project Specialist for the Trout Unlimited. And then we've got Becky. We've got Becky Lineweber. She's the executive director of the Pikes Peak Outdoor Recreation Alliance. And she's also the co-owner of the Anglers Cove in Car City. So, as we mentioned this morning, our time is limited, so panelists, please keep your comments concise. Also, please focus on the topic of putting ethics into practice. Following the panelists' comments, I will facilitate a short question and answer session. So we'll go ahead and get started. So Becky, what are some of the biggest ethical challenges facing the outdoor industry today? Has this issue changed over the years? If so, how?
Yes, but I'll get to that part in a moment. I think one of the biggest ethical challenges facing the outdoor recreation industry right now is authenticity. And I think the word authenticity embodies a number of those principles: integrity and honesty and trust, among others. And I want to give you just a few examples, but what I mean by authenticity is that what we state we believe in, our values, actually we live out in practice in every part of our business. And that can be pretty challenging. A couple of recent examples. Some of you may be familiar with Camber Outdoors, and there is a pretty recent debacle that happened with Camber Outdoors. Basically, and I'm just going to go through this briefly, but Deanne Buck, the CEO of Camber, went on stage at outdoor retailer Snow Show just a few months ago, and she stated that they were launching their ethics pledge, their CEO ethics pledge. And they brought up 60 leaders of outdoor companies to come up on stage with them to sign the pledge. There were two big problems with this, and social media lit up, and there's been all kinds of backlash since. But the number one problem is when she did that, she named that it was the first of its kind, without taking into account that other measures had already been done, and those measures had been led by people of color and people in minorities and the exact people that she wanted in the diversity, equity, and inclusion pledge. But because she stated it was first of its kind, she pretty much ignored what others had done, the other groundwork that had been laid. The second error she made was not involving those same folks, the same communities, in the development of that, and not reflecting it in her own organization. Like I said, big backlash. She's no longer the CEO. They're doing a number of things since then, but although their stated goals and beliefs were valuable and everybody could get on board with that, the way they went about it, everybody could tell that there was some inauthenticity there, and it blew back on them pretty hard. Closer to home, just a couple other examples of why this is so important. At Anglers Cove, we're a fly shop, fly fishing. And our staff receive merchandise, every day from different brands. And they can tell what brand A, brand B, brand C really believe about the things that they state just by the products that they receive. And in fact, one of our brands, we'll call them brand A, takes a very big stand on the environment, on conservation. They're doing amazing work, but they have the most packaging of plastics that aren't recyclable. It's beyond companies B, C, and D. And our staff look at that and go, wow, this company really isn't living out what they believe. So that's a challenge in our industry from not just our consumers, but also our staff can see when we're inauthentic. Another example that is really a challenge to me, again, within our business, we have a guide and outfitter business, and typically we have thousands of reusable water bottles that we've used in our guide program over the many years that we've done that. We've changed our practice. We've gone with the Kick Plastic campaign. We've eliminated those, And so now everybody uses reusable ones for their guide trips, and that has taken thousands a year out of what we heard about earlier, out of the oceans. However, if we don't also look at other wasteful practices within our business, and we are doing that, that authenticity, our customers, our staff, our peers, our vendors, everybody can see. So I really think that authenticity is a big piece of this. When you asked, is this a new occurrence, or is it more prevalent now that we have some of these ethical challenges? I think it is more prevalent now, and for a couple of reasons. One has been mentioned before, and that is the millennials. Honestly, I think this community is more aware, and they care more about your company, and they care if you match your walk with your talk. They want to do business with companies that are ethical, that believe in giving back, that care about the community, not just the dollar. And so I think the millennials have a lot to teach the rest of us, and my kids are great at that. They're the first that kind of brought to my attention some things. So I think that it's more in the limelight because of that. But secondly, the outdoor industry is taking a firmer stand on policies than we ever have before. We're caring about sustainability. We're doing some self-monitoring of our industry. With the Higg Index, we're looking at sustainability at all parts of the supply chain. So I do think because we're taking a firmer stand on things, we're in the limelight, and that authenticity really needs to shine through at every level.
Very well stated, Becky. Jesse, Frank, do you have anything to add to that? No?
You know, maybe, I guess one of the big challenges we're facing, is that better? All right. One of the big challenges we're facing, and it was touched on last night a little bit, is just, simply loving our outdoors, our waterways, our mountains to death. And folks going out and using it and then walking away, expecting to be there forever and not planning to sustain that into the future. And we see that here. I've seen that in the Gunnison area over time growing up here with fishermen becoming more common, more rafts on the river, more use at the put-ins, and it's an issue that's going to have to be addressed, and I think it's up to this generation to figure out how we can take care of it.
Very good, very interesting. Frank, I have a question for you. As an advocate or policymaker in the outdoors industry, what advice would you share to help people who hold steady to their values and make good choices even when they face pressure to make unethical paths?
Well, I serve a couple of different roles here in the community. I'm the general manager of the Upper Gunnison River Water Conservancy District, and I think we have the record longest name of any district around, so we take pride in that. One of the other community activities I'm involved in is with the Gunnison County STORE Committee. And the STORE stands for Sustainable Tourism and Outdoor Recreation. It's an effort that's been getting notoriety across the state for being innovative and bringing in all different kinds of stakeholders. We have Forest Service, BLM, National Park Service, NRCS, local entities, counties, municipalities, and then all the different recreational user groups like boaters and mountain bikers and dirt bikers and silent track and wilderness people. And to get those people all in one room and agree on things is just an amazing sight to behold. But what the effort is trying to reach a unilateral statement when we're weighing in on federal issues. Like when the Forest Service says we want a vegetation management program on Taylor Park. We have all these different user groups together, so the Forest Service gets one common voice, one message that helps them much better manage instead of trying to wade through all the chaff of the different diverging opinions out there. So it really is an excellent forum for working through these thorny issues, and like Jesse said, areas are being loved to death. How can we manage those, and how can we help the federal agencies manage those is a big part of that STORE committee, and I'm proud to be a part of that. The other thing, my day job as the manager of the Upper Gunnison River Water Conservancy District is our mission is to promote and protect the water quality and quantity in the Upper Gunnison Basin. Our basin is parts of 3 counties, Gunnison, Hinsdale, and Saguache. So we range from Crested Butte to the north down to Lake City to the south, Monarch Pass on the east side, and Blue Mesa Dam on the west. So those areas are fairly diverse. We have an 11-member board that gives me direction and marching orders on how to achieve the policies that they set. But one of the things, just kind of a microcosm of a challenge that we face, is on the Taylor River. The Taylor River has a reservoir, Taylor Park Reservoir. It's 106,230 acre feet that was built by the Bureau of Reclamation in 1937. It was built for the benefit of irrigators down in the Uncompahgre Valley in the Montrose Delta area. So they get the first fill of the reservoir, but in the recent years we have obtained a second fill in the reservoir for the benefit of users in our basin. So as long as we can have water released by the Bureau and it flows down the Taylor River and down the Gunnison into Blue Mesa, we want to maximize the benefit of that for our constituents. Well, we have a pretty diverse group of folks on the Taylor River. And so in order to focus the feedback that we get from those people, we set up a Taylor Local Users Group. And so 5 main categories of users that we have are, we have the Taylor Park Marina, which is an operator at the reservoir. They love houseboats or pontoon boats and fishing, and their desire is to have a relatively full lake all summer long, and not too high, because then if the wind blows, it damages their docks. If the lake gets too low, then the put-ins become a mud pit and the trucks get stuck putting in their boats. So that's their desire. They want levels just pretty high, but not too high, not too low. Okay, we can do that, right? No problem. So go downstream. We have just below the dam, we have a private property owner who has an in-stream flow right, and his right is for 445 cubic feet per second. His right is senior to our water right for our second fill, so he has a lot of say in what we do on the Taylor operation, so we have to pay attention to what he asks. So he wants high flows in the summertime, but in addition, he values the fishery and is convinced that the river needs 100 cubic feet per second releases all winter long. Okay, sure, we can do that. We can have a peak high flow and high winter flows, and then we have this high reservoir, keep the reservoir full, right? So we might have a little issue with that, but we'll see what we can do. Go further downstream, we have wading fishermen as one of the category of users in our committee. They would like to have a healthy fishery above all. They'd like to have somewhere between 200 cubic feet and 400 cubic feet per second all summer long, so that it's good, at least enough flow for the fishery, but it's not too high so they can't wade the river. So no, we can't have 500 or 600 because then we can't get in and go, you end up at Almont and Gunnison. So that's not a good thing. So then further downstream, we have at Almont, we have the boating community. We have the professional boaters, and they want high flows all summer long. From Memorial Day to Labor Day, more the merrier. Keep the river rocking and rolling for their customers from Texas and California and wherever. So lots of water all summer long. So, okay, how does that fit with all those other uses? Not very well. And then finally, we have irrigators. We have the agricultural community that has water rights that they want high spring flows because their ditches turn on just in the next week or two and the runoff hasn't started. So they want to get water out across their pastures as soon as possible so they can fill up the gravelly soils and be ready to grow a crop as soon as possible. So they need high releases early. They don't care about the summer, early summer, because there's plenty of water, but then as the flow drops off in late summer and in fall, they want more water again. And they said, if you guys can't release enough water for us, we'll just go into the river like we've always done for decades and push up a gravel dam across the Gunnison River and get enough water in our ditch if need be. Well, the fishermen don't like that. The boaters don't like that. So we've got to figure out how to keep the agricultural users with their very senior water rights happy. So you put all those 6 uses into a pot. We call it the sausage grinder, and you just grind out a product at the end of all these discussions and grumblings, and at the end of the day, you come up with a product that makes everybody equally unhappy and equally mad when they walk out the room and yes, we've done it. So, but really the key to getting that all done is what's over my shoulder here is the ethics that's involved, and the key ones are trust, that those users trust us to provide them with accurate information, that we don't have any ulterior motives, that we're accountable, it's transparent, and it's fair to all, and it's viable. And the most important one to me is that's the rule of law, and if they don't like it, I'll have my attorney talk to them. So he keeps me out of a lot of trouble. But anyway, it works really well, and ethics is a very key part of that discussion.
What a great way of demonstrating stakeholder relations. Thank you. Jesse, how do you, or your organization, use the Daniels Fund Ethic Initiative principles to define ethical use of the outdoors? How do you promote ethical use of the outdoors in policy making and other initiatives involving the outdoor industry?
You know, that's a pretty complex question. I'll try to hit as many parts of it as I can. But a little background, I work for Trout Unlimited. I'm focused in the Upper Gunnison Basin. And my job is to, similar to what Frank was talking about, work with agricultural users to improve stream flows and protect in-stream habitat. So a lot of the times I'm starting from scratch with landowners or producers or land managers to develop a project that might serve multiple goals of maintaining irrigation, improving stream flows, improving habitat for trout. And that conversation is often a hard one to get going, you know, even to get in the door to visit with some of these folks. So some of the principles that are I guess Trout Unlimited is founded in, and my work ethic is founded in our trust and respect, and developing the reputation that if these folks are going to be willing to participate in a project where maybe we redo a diversion structure that they have to push up on an annual basis, where they push up cobble, for example, to dry up the stream. If we can develop a strategy to put in a permanent rock structure that they don't have to maintain annually, and it's better for the stream channel, if I present these projects to them and they don't have the trust or faith in my ability to complete it, or if they're suspect that I have an ulterior motive, then the project's not going to move forward, and TU's mission's not going to move forward. So I think those are the kind of the two that really strike home to me. And oftentimes there's a bit of a disconnect between the partners I work with on projects and the outdoor industry, anglers versus ag interests, for example. And I try to walk a thin line between the two and relate that empathy that was brought up earlier, that kind of struck home to me, is to have work to get folks to understand each other's needs, essentially. And that's I've been fortunate enough to get my feet wet in both sides of the battle, if you want to put it that way. So I have an understanding of what ag folks need for irrigation purposes and what their strategies are to get there. And at the same time, I have the fishermen, and being in the outdoor industry, I understand what they need for the stream. So if I can relate that information back and forth between the two and make the connection, then that's where these projects are developed. And that's when we start getting funding from the state and other agencies that can sustain the waterways into the future, essentially. Does that wrap it up?
That's very good answer. Would anybody else like to speak to that question?
I'll chime in on that a little bit. I don't know how many of you are aware, but Colorado is the only state right now whose tourism office has a partnership with Leave No Trace. Because of that, we've taken that at the local level and we've tried to incorporate that into a number of things. So as far as the principles go, I think utilizing Leave No Trace brings in respect, accountability, and viability. A couple of ways that we've done that as the Pikes Peak Outdoor Recreation Alliance, so I've got a couple of hats on for that. We have some events, some community events, and we're taking Leave No Trace principles and applying them as we're teaching new recreators how to climb, how to fish, how to do archery. At each of those stations, we're taking Leave No Trace principles and teaching them. We also have a hub website for outdoor recreation for the Pikes Peak region, and we've taken those principles throughout that website. As a business, Anglers Covey, through our guide service, we're certifying all of our guides with Leave No Trace. So it's something that we take seriously. Conservation and business go hand in hand, and I think sometimes people don't realize that, and it seems like they're opposing entities. A business, I think sometimes the thought is they're just there to have consumers and take from the land, but when we don't have good habitat, we don't have a good business. There's no reason for people to come to a fly shop if there aren't trout in the river, and so Trout Unlimited is very important to us, actually. Their conservation efforts, we have a lot of volunteers that get involved in that. So Leave No Trace is key. Transparency, fairness, and trust. I'm kind of lumping all these together because it's hard to take one and just say something supports one. They really do all work interchangeably and with one another, collaboratively. In that area, we've had a situation with guiding and outfitting in Colorado that's been a little bit challenging with our land managers, particularly with the Forest Service. Some of the regulations are very antiquated and they don't really accomplish anymore what they were set out to do. And I'll give you an example. A permitted outfitter may have a certain number of user days that they can take people to go fishing or hiking or climbing or whatever your business is into that resource. Well, those user days count as people. So if I have 150 user days, I have 150 people that I can take in. But I can do that, that's my set allowance for a year. I can take all those people on one day. The impact to that resource, if I did that, would be significant. There's nothing that tells me that I can't dump them all in the summer months. A better way to regulate that would be to spread those out. You could give outfitters more days, but spread them out and say you can only take so many people during these periods of time. So that being said, what we've done is we've brought together guides and outfitters as well as land management agencies and tried to work through those hurdles and those things that are set right now that don't really accomplish what anybody wants to accomplish. And so in doing that, we have to have transparency. We have to talk about what these things are encouraging that we don't want. We have to have fairness. We have to talk about what outfitters' needs are, what land management needs are, what the public needs are who don't utilize outfitters, and we have to have trust in that process. So I think those principles are all used throughout that process.
Very good, very interesting. So to close out this discussion, I'm going to ask one more question. I'm just going to open it up to everybody, whoever would like to respond. Have you ever been confronted in an ethical challenge which involves convincing someone to do something the right thing? How did you have the courage to do this, and particularly if they were in a position of authority?
I can kind of touch on that, not really any specific examples, but I know the situation, and that's, I guess the last part of that question is the courage. How do you get the courage? Because I know that's what it takes, is to stick your neck out, and a lot of times you're going to take heat for it. And for me, I could think of a couple instances where, yeah, I could, whether it be a goal I wanted to attain, or maybe not so much ethical challenges, but you know it's something that needs to be done and needs to be done the right way. And if you kind of have to go with your gut, and I can think of a few instances where laying in bed late at night saying, wow, am I doing the right thing? Am I really gonna, the amount of heat I'm gonna take for this, is it gonna be worth it? And I'm not sure where you get the courage for it, but I think if you can found your decisions in these principles, then that's going to be a really strong foundation for the development of that courage.
Yeah, and I think when you advocate, you might, I can't think of a personal example either, but when I advocate and when our organization advocates for public lands, for the Land Water Conservation Fund, for legislation for creating Browns Canyon as a national monument, all of those things are definitely dealing with authorities, but they need to know what we want, right? And if we are basing it on these values, then I think that's where you get the courage from. But every day I think we all face that, and somebody said earlier in this conference, you need to be able to look at yourself in the mirror at the end of the day and be able to like what you see, and I think standing on your principles is the only way that you'll be able to do that.
Would you like to speak to that?
Sure. I heard of a story where there was a county commissioner, a lead county commissioner, who was asking the head of their road and bridge department to do something that was against the law. And the road and bridge supervisor said no. And the poor guy went through multiple executive sessions where the 3 county commissioners were trying to get him fired, but he fortunately stood by his guns and was ethical and maintained his let's see, integrity, that's the word. And so it was difficult for him, but I admire the guy for standing up for that, and he ultimately got the support of the other 2 county commissioners, so it was a 2-to-1 vote to get him fired. But it was really stressful for him, and it's tough, but as Jesse said, it's when you go to bed at night and you know you did the right thing, you stood by your integrity, that helps a great deal, doing the right thing.
Very good. We'll open the discussion up now to questions and answers. So if you all have any questions you'd like to ask, please feel free. I believe we have somebody with a microphone coming around.
So my question is for Becky specifically, but feel free to chime in if you have input. You touched on earlier authenticity and how that is an integral part of ethics in the outdoor recreation industry. What sort of strategies do you recommend, if any, to help us navigate that minefield, to actually recognize when a company has been using manufactured authenticity or when they're greenwashing just to get our business? How do we tell what businesses are ethically sourcing their materials or practicing their business ethically?
I mentioned the HIG index earlier, and I actually don't know if that's something that's available to the public yet or not, but if you go to the Outdoor Industry Association website, the HIG index is a sustainability index, and it talks about the full supply chain, and it's what our outdoor brands are looking at to evaluate themselves. Right now it's a self-monitoring type of thing, but as far as I know, we're the first industry to do that. So that's one way to do it. I also think, and this was in one of our small groups, and I really appreciated this, and that is, as an organization, the way that you know if you're being authentic is you ask your consumers, you ask your staff, you seek feedback, and that it takes humility, but I think that there was a question on that small group piece where does it come from the top or can it come from the bottom up? And in our discussion, we said, you know what, that can come from the bottom up, but only if there's a culture in your organization that's receptive to that. But as a consumer, it's a do your homework as best you can kind of thing. Yeah.
Anybody else? Any other questions? There we go.
This is for Frank. Frank, can you give us an example of your store project where you have come up with one voice to the federal regulators that you were talking about?
One example of a project that we're working on with the help of the store committee, the Sustainable Tourism and Outdoor Recreation, is on the Upper Slate River. This is a reach of the river that's just upstream of Crested Butte. It is, in the past 3 years, has grown exponentially in the amount of stand-up paddleboarders. That industry has really taken off, and it's an absolute gorgeous setting, meandering stream, and it's perfect for that, with one exception, and that is the presence of a great blue heron rookery. It is the highest elevation rookery in the United States. The herons get in there in late March, and they build their nest then, and they start hatching in late April, and they are prime. They're ready to leave the nest. They're fledging right about the time when boating is at its busiest time. And so there's been a great deal of research. A professor here at Western is an ornithologist and has done studies on how impactful this boating activity is to the great blue heron. So through the help of the store committee and the Upper Slate River Working Group, they've reached a compromise where the boating will not take place until July 15th. And hopefully by instituting that delay, it will allow the rookery to, for the most part, to proceed without impacts. The issue is that it has to be voluntary because the put-in is on BLM, and the BLM has no, they will not impose any impediments to boating on the community, on the reach of river, because they can't. So it's all by word of mouth, it's signage, it's all the different user groups are agreeing and putting up signs. One of the Western students and our intern, Cheryl Swellick, is going to be the hall monitor, so to speak, up there this summer and advise people when they come in, and if they're boating before April or July 15th, she will nicely ask them to not float the river during that period. But that's an example of working together and how you have those different parties together. I mean, because we have John Norton, who spoke earlier, he's on that committee, and his job is to promote tourism. And so you want to get boaters on the river, but he understands, and our community understands, you have to be respectful of the environment. So that's one example.
Have you guys seen any impacts or anything due to the increase in population / tourism in Colorado? Like ecological impacts or even business impacts what you guys saw?
Yes. I think we can all say yes.
Yes.
We have definitely seen those impacts, and in Colorado Springs, we're estimated to be larger than Denver by 2050. So population increase is going up at a very rapid clip, as well as tourism. So how do we manage that? That is the question on the table for us every day. Couple of things that we're doing. The Leave No Trace piece is a big part of it. And I think Colorado, I commend our state office for taking a stand on that, because they heard from the communities that, hey, we've got all these tourists coming in and they're not treating our places that we love the way that we treat the places that we love. What are we going to do about that? You're just going to be bringing more people in. And so they said, you're right, we have to teach them how to do that. So that's one effort that I see at the state level. At the local level, we can all do our part. And I heard earlier in this conference something that we're working on at Pikes Peak Outdoor Recreation Alliance, and that is taking those lesser impacted areas, those hidden gems that we all have in our communities, and trying to move people off the highly impacted areas and helping them learn that there are so many other areas that they can recreate at. So some of that is just moving populations to other areas and spreading out the use. So it's teaching them to be responsible, it's spreading out the use. And then it's also, I've heard about volunteerism here as well, getting volunteers involved. And there's actually a big movement called voluntourism. I don't know if you guys are very familiar with that, but folks are coming to places where they're coming for a conference or they're bringing their family, and they actually want to give back while they're there. And so creating opportunities for them, publicizing those, making them aware of, hey, you and your family can go work on this trail while you're here. Or while you're here for a business conference, take your team and do a team builder and go do a cleanup at one of the reservoirs. So I think those are all ways that we can get involved and our communities can get involved.
Another effort that's being done to offset impacts is in the upper basin, upper part of Crested Butte area and so forth, is the Crested Butte Mountain Bike Association. SIMBA is what they're known as locally, but they're a group of trail advocates, mountain bikers that historically were kind of not very closely knit, but in the recent years they've gotten a good structure and they're really putting back into the trail network and the environment and trying to help preserve the quality of the biking experience. And some of the things they're doing, they cooperated on an effort called Mountain Manners. It's letting people know, especially people coming in from out of town that don't know that, gee, you shouldn't leave that gate open after the fence gate after you ride your bike through it, that make sure the gate's closed so that the rancher doesn't lose his cattle, or proper ways to dispose of waste when you're biking along a trail. It's just, or if the trail's muddy in the springtime, don't ride that trail. Don't tear up the trail and go somewhere else. That's the kind of effort they're trying to get out to preserve and protect the environment. Our district, the Upper Gunnison River Water Conservancy District, has done an effort. We've helped fund some outdoor toilets on federal lands. It's been a difficult decision. My board struggles with this because we are a local taxing entity. We are funded by property taxes, so local money, and there's a lot of grumbling. Well, why would we use local money to fund something for the federal government on federal lands? And really it comes down to because it's protecting the local environment. And so we've helped fund a couple of toilets in recent years, one up Musicians Camp on Slate River. Another one will be going in this year up on Cottonwood Pass, when the Cottonwood Passes will be paved and straightened and opened sometime late June. So you'll be able to come over more easily after that's done. But we recognize there's a lot more people coming our way. Some estimates are 50% increase in population by mid-century. We need to be prepared for that because people are coming to Colorado because of what we already enjoy here, and we want to maintain that moving forward.
Excuse me, I have a question. We've had wildfires, droughts, floods. What's your role, especially when we have those natural disasters? And how do you work with private industries to help solve those issues? What is it? I don't know if you want to talk about it because we've had a lot of fires.
We have had a lot of fires. In fact, good news, we had a Waldo Canyon fire. Y'all are probably pretty familiar with that. And we are in the planning stages right now of rebuilding that area, rebuilding the trail. And they're doing it in the right way, I would say. It's a huge coalition of stakeholders, a lot of public process, getting everybody on board so that we, number one, don't have another Waldo Canyon, and number two, restore it and provide the opportunities and the experiences that people do come to love and enjoy. As far as working with private entities, there have been big initiatives in our area as far as landowners, homeowners, doing what they can to protect the property around them. But a lot of the problem is management practices from years and years ago that we now have just an overwhelming challenge in front of us. Part of the piece that we play also is getting people, this may seem contrary to what you would think at first, but getting people out into the outdoors, I think actually protects those things from happening again, because you've got eyeballs out there. You've got somebody on a trail who sees there's something happening and can report it before it becomes a huge disaster. So a lot of coalitions, a lot of collaboration, working, public-private partnerships are a big piece of that. We have our wildland-urban interface, our WUI, is so close in the Pikes Peak region, and that is where our town, our city, borders right up against our forest and our public lands. And because of that, all the issues we have in the city, they start to creep up into our forest. Some of the long-term campers, some of those issues we're dealing with, but we also have the same thing, the wildfires, the wildlife coming out of their habitats and coming down into the city. So dealing with public-private partnerships in that wildland-urban interface is something we've all been working on.
Thank you, panelists. You guys had excellent responses today. Appreciate it. Did you have a presentation you wanted to make?
Well, finish up. See, I want to thank everybody for coming and to keep on schedule. And thank you so much for your comments. They'll be around for more questions.